being here and for the opportunity to present. As Dr. Liu said, from Texas A&M University, this paper was actually originally started as an initiative on the 25th anniversary of the publication of Technical Report number 72 by Larry Koskela, because this 25th anniversary was in fact just recently held. And we, Dr. Lincoln Forbes and myself, as well as Dr. Cynthia Tsao, undertook this process of trying to understand where we are right now in terms of lean education in the United States. So this is really a current study report and required us contacting a number of individuals. And so I did the first part of this paper, which is at US universities, and Dr. Forbes is going to speak about companies. Okay, so without further ado, as many of us have noticed, and there have been lots of discussion today, that lean is kind of a little bit of a confusing animal. It's a little bit like the five blind men, which I understand is perhaps an Indian tale, at least that's what I understand, where they're all touching one part of the elephant. And then, of course, in order to understand the bigger picture, really requires working together to see that. Otherwise, you just think an elephant is like a snake, or a tail is like an elephant's like a rope on the tail. So, so of course, this is a challenge that few students and companies actually grasp this fuller picture of lean. But also, one of the real challenges we have with students is many students think it's just common sense, because they may not have had an opportunity to work in companies before they get to us. And so it's hard at first. We have to figure out how to convince them that it's worth studying. This is a follow-up to a paper that actually was written, it's spearheaded by Cynthia Tsao a number of years ago, and where actually she initially contacted 7 university faculty members in the United States, as well as Dr. Farouk Hamza's work at the American University in Beirut. But basically looking to see what are the contents of the curriculum of these courses. And I know you cannot see this, but the chart is actually published in the paper, and it's also in your A3 sheets. And, but essentially it's looking at the readings, but as well as the simulations that are played, and then, how is this material conveyed? What is the structural framework? And so we decided to expand on that chart to basically get an update of that. We contacted 5 university faculty who had not been contacted before in the US, and we actually, so we asked them to respond using a spreadsheet. And then we had Q&A afterwards by telephone for clarification. So many of you are very familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, understanding that in order to really understand something, there are a number of different ways of learning that, remembering and recall is sort of the lowest level of that pyramid. And, really understanding, applying, evaluating, and creating. And so a lot of these courses try to include all of that. So it's not just recall. So if you recall, at universities, I said that you have to first show that there's a problem. So here's an example of what I do in my class is I play something called the repairman game, thanks to Alan Mossman. And this is basically to show that if you were to brainstorm all the reasons why a certain repairman was not able to meet his quota of 8 calls per day, how many of these are due to his fault and how many are due to the system. And people find out very quickly that there's so many things that are outside the control of that repairman, including weather and traffic and people not being home, which is a common thing, service calls in the United States. Deming's red bead experiment, of course, is another one where he would, traditionally you could get this online. He has a paddle and he has these red beads, which are problems in this paddle, and the students have to lift it up, and they have to have fewer than, say, 4 problems, 4 red beads, and if they have more than 4, then you as a project manager start yelling at them, right? And so you kind of simulate what it's like to feel that you're at a complete loss, because in fact this has nothing to do with their ability to collect beads. And statistically, there are more problems than there are white beads. And so that is one way to demonstrate it. These are some various frameworks that we discovered people are using. Factory Physics is a book that a number of people are using the 11 principles from Larry Coscello's technical report number 72, 14 principles from the Toyota Way. We saw the House of Lean, the historical development of lean thought, which is something that I use. I go and they read the number of writings from Taylor, the Gilbreths and Deming and Ono, and so I want them to understand that this is not a flavor of the month. It's something that has developed over time. The Associated General Contractors textbooks, we'll talk a little bit about that very briefly because that's something new that's emerged. And Lincoln Forbes textbook, I just saw Dr. Tarek Adelamid, I think, walked in, and I think he has been also using that. And so these, some of you are familiar with these books. And again, over on the right-hand side, you'll see this is where we actually, I have them read a number of the traditional writings, primary source writings, so they see that this came from, it's deeply rooted. And then, of course, there's so many games that are played. And so we've categorized a number of these simulations and games. We make our own. But these are really, and then there are many ways, of course, to, you saw one just right now. In the case of certain types of simulations, honestly speaking, it's, you know, the reality is this Lego airplane game is a lot of fun to play and to learn the whole process of pull planning and one-piece flow. But it's, you know, it's heavy, it's expensive, Legos are expensive, and so there's a number of different variations of this that have this one, which LeapCom, which is actually instead of building airplanes from Dr. Raphael Sachs, where they're building little homes. But then there's the dot card game, which came out of LCI. There's a similar game with just paper cups. And then Tarek over here has come up with one where they make lanterns out of paper, which I think is really, really interesting. And of course, you know, many people know about the Lego last planner simulation, but it takes 4 to 5 hours to play, whereas the DPR pull planning could be done potentially within a 50-minute class period. So using wooden blocks, and then of course there's a target value design simulation with estimating and marshmallow challenge and all sorts of things like this. But this is really to show you that what we're trying to do is just basically get a snapshot in time to see how this, in a sense, this movement, this philosophy has been diffusing through American universities. And it's really quite fascinating. One thing we've noticed is that this is a category that I added with Lincoln and Cynthia. And so you can see that there's some additional requirements that have emerged. One of the most fascinating for me is the Associated General Contractors, which is a standardized course that has emerged in the United States. And we found that Dr. Stevens from Pittsburgh State University, Joe Stevens, is actually using this kind of standardized course now to teach lean. And it's being predominantly used to teach individuals and companies about lean. And yet now it's also being adopted by university, which is quite fascinating, because up until now, these have been very customized courses that have been assembled by the faculty members, and now it's a standardized system. So you can see that these are all, this is the original 7 columns in the actual publication. You can see they're grayed out, so you could see the distinction. And this is the add-on of what we've done. So that just demonstrates that there's more games that have been emerging. As you can see, additional simulations that have been developed and are being played. And then, of course, what was most notable to us with the Associated General Contractors Certificate Program. I think that part of the appeal of this program is, I think it's that students see it as an opportunity to put something on their resume, and it makes employment a little bit easier. They can actually, it kind of certifies them. And so there's been, you know, they have to take a test at the end to demonstrate that they've passed this, and then during career fairs, they can go up and promote this when they promote themselves. And just so you know that this will be discussed in a little bit greater detail by Lincoln immediately after this talk. So he's done a companion paper, which we did together. And so in conclusion, really we've noticed that since the last publication that was done on this topic a few years back, really that the content of lean curriculum has been evolving in terms of all of these categories, grading formats. Now there's videos. There weren't videos before. Now students are being asked to, for example, watch videos on YouTube and also submit videos, make their own videos and upload them, which is new. There's in fact, a book that came out called 2-Second Lean, which is all about you know, having people find ways of doing things better and then sharing it on a video, and which is very fascinating. And so I did that with my class, for example, is now they make videos as well. The types of readings and the simulations, of course, have grown. When we just saw a new one that has been added to this chart, hopefully, so that'll be really nice. And then and that's this emergence of the Associated General Contractors Lean Certification. Now, this does raise a kind of interesting question and potential concern as far as our community goes. As you know, we're all about continuous improvement. And at some point, when we start to standardize a curriculum that has been done with the AGC, does this sort of freeze the content of lean in the minds of companies? And so there's kind of the, you know, what is now accepted curriculum, and then, you know, will that at all impede the progress of continuous improvement? And that's just a question I have for all of you, and your thoughts on that. Okay, I think it's all yours.